Hello, young curiosity viewers. Picture a nation defined by one single powerful artery, a ribbon of green life carving its way through a vast expanse of barren, golden desert. This is Egypt, a land where a staggering 95% of the population lives on just 5% of the land, all concentrated along the banks of a single, majestic river. This is the Nile, and for thousands of years it has been more than just a river. It has been the very soul of the nation, a lifeline that has shaped its history, its culture, and its destiny. The Greek historian Herodotus famously called Egypt the gift of the Nile, and for good reason. Without this one river, the entire civilization would likely never have existed. But in a modern world with increasing populations and new geopolitical challenges, is this ancient gift now a source of vulnerability? How does a country manage its survival when it is so completely dependent on a single resource? Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll understand why the Nile is the most critical factor in Egypt's past, present, and future, and why the gift is now a fragile and intensely contested prize. But before we dive into this remarkable story, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Young Curiosity for more mind-blowing insights and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing our global community grow. The historical dependence of Egypt on the Nile is rooted in a fundamental geographical reality: agriculture. For a civilization to flourish, it needs a reliable source of food. While the surrounding land of Egypt is an arid, inhospitable desert, the Nile River provided an unparalleled solution. For millennia, the river would flood its banks each year with remarkable predictability, a phenomenon known as the inundation. When the floodwaters receded, they left behind a rich, black, and incredibly fertile layer of silt that had been carried all the way from the Ethiopian highlands. This fertile land, known as the Black Land or Kemet, was in stark contrast to the surrounding desert or Red Land, Deshret. This annual gift of nutrients allowed ancient Egyptians to develop one of the world's first large-scale agricultural societies. They were able to grow staple crops like wheat and barley in abundance, producing a surplus that could support a growing and increasingly complex society. This reliable food supply was the bedrock upon which all other aspects of Egyptian life were built, from the construction of massive monuments to the development of writing, mathematics, and a centralized government. The entire Egyptian calendar was even based on the 3 seasons of the Nile: flooding, growing, and harvesting. Without the Nile's predictable and fertile floods, a civilization on this scale would simply have been impossible. The Nile was not just an agricultural engine, it was also the central nervous system of the entire country. The river served as the primary highway for transportation and communication. In a country with very little rainfall and vast stretches of desert, the river was the most efficient way to travel from north to south. This was crucial for trade, for moving goods between different regions, and for consolidating political power. The sheer logistics of building monuments like the pyramids would have been unimaginable without the Nile. Massive stone blocks from distant quarries were loaded onto barges and floated hundreds of miles down the river to the construction sites, a task that would have been impossible to accomplish over land. The river's flow, which moves from south to north, made it even more efficient. Boats could travel north with the current, and sailors could use the prevailing winds that blow from north to south to sail back against the current. This unique combination of water flow and wind direction made the Nile a perfect two-way street, connecting the entire kingdom and enabling a level of unity and economic activity that was unprecedented for its time. Beyond these practical uses, the Nile held immense cultural and religious significance. It was revered as a deity, Hapi, and was seen as a divine force that brought life and prosperity. The cycles of flooding and life were deeply ingrained in the Egyptian worldview and spiritual beliefs, reinforcing the idea that the river was not just a resource, but a fundamental part of the nation's identity. But what do you think is more important for a civilization, a river that provides food or one that enables transportation? Let me know in the comments below. In the modern era, Egypt's dependence on the Nile has not diminished, it has only evolved. Today, more than 95% of Egypt's water needs for drinking, sanitation, and industry come from the Nile. Its water is still the lifeblood of the nation's agriculture, which employs a significant portion of the population and is a major part of the economy. The Nile Delta, where the river fans out into the Mediterranean Sea, is one of the most densely populated and agriculturally productive regions in the world. In the mid-20th century, Egypt took a monumental step to control the Nile's flow and end its cyclical floods by building the Aswan High Dam. Completed in 1970, the dam created Lake Nasser, one of the largest artificial lakes in the world. The dam provides a stable year-round water supply for irrigation, and it generates a significant amount of hydroelectric power for the country's growing cities and industries. However, this modern marvel also created new dependencies and vulnerabilities. By controlling the Nile's flow, Egypt lost the annual gift of fertile silt, forcing farmers to rely on expensive fertilizers. The dam also made Egypt's water security a central geopolitical issue. The Nile is an international river with its headwaters in other countries like Ethiopia, which is building its own dams to harness the river for its own development. This has created a high-stakes geopolitical drama. Countries in the Nile Basin, particularly Ethiopia, are now building major hydroelectric projects like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD. Ethiopia sees these projects as essential for its own economic development and for providing electricity to its rapidly growing population. However, Egypt views the GERD as an existential threat to its water supply, fearing that the dam will reduce the amount of water reaching its borders. This tension highlights a critical modern reality for Egypt. Its dependence on the Nile is no longer a simple matter of geography, but is now a complex issue of international diplomacy, engineering, and national security. The Nile, once a source of stability, is now at the heart of a potential resource conflict in a region that can ill afford more instability. The future of Egypt's relationship with the Nile is no longer guaranteed by nature, but is now subject to negotiation and the political will of its upstream neighbors. This is a very different kind of challenge from the ones the ancient Egyptians faced. Ultimately, the reason for Egypt's deep dependence on the Nile is a story thousands of years in the making. It began as a matter of simple survival in a desert landscape, grew into the foundation of a great civilization, and has now evolved into a complex modern challenge. From providing the fertile soil that allowed for the birth of a civilization to serving as the economic engine and national highway for an entire kingdom, the Nile's role in Egypt's history is undeniable. Today, as the country faces the pressures of a growing population and the geopolitical reality of shared water resources, its dependence on this single river is a reminder of the powerful and enduring link between a nation and its most precious natural resource. The Nile truly is, and always has been, the lifeblood of Egypt.